Okay, so you're thinking about checking out that new Netflix show, Running Point.
The one everyone's talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Well, we're doing a deep dive into a couple of podcast reviews to figure out, is it actually worth watching?
Yeah, worth the hype.
Is it worth the hype?
Yeah.
So think Ted Lasso meets Succession, but instead of, soccer or like a huge company, this one's all about the NBA.
I gotta say, I'm really interested in how both these reviews were looking at praise the show's premise and Kate Hudson's performance, but they also kind of hint at some weaknesses, too.
Interesting.
Yeah, a real mixed bag, you know?
Yeah, those are always fun to unpack.
They are.
So just to give everybody some background, we're talking about a 2025 sports comedy drama.
Okay.
And both these reviews seem to agree that it's that blend of family drama and the behind-the-scenes world of an NBA team that really makes it stand out.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
Yeah.
I think a lot of sports shows can fall into, really predictable tropes.
Oh.
But if you add in that family drama layer, especially with, a comedic twist, I think that has the potential to really elevate the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to tap into that real-life drama that happens off the court.
Oh, for sure.
Which can be just as intense, if not more so, than the actual games themselves.
And speaking of off-the-court drama, the reviews keep bringing up Kate Hudson's performance.
Oh, yeah.
As Isla Gordon, who suddenly has to run the LA Waves after her brother's scandal. I mean, come on.
That's a good hook.
That's a hook right there.
It is.
It totally reminds me of Jeannie Buss taking over the Lakers.
Oh, 100%. I mean, grounding the show in those real-world parallels just makes it so much more interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just some made-up story,
Right.
It's tapping into the really, real challenges of leading a major sports franchise.
Exactly. Both reviews mention that, the show draws inspiration from figures like Jeannie Buss, which gives us a glimpse into the pressure cooker of, managing an NBA team.
Right. But with that fictionalized twist.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it relatable, even if you aren't a huge basketball fan. Leadership, ambition, family dynamics. These are all themes that I think resonate with just about everyone.
Totally.
It's almost like Shakespeare, but with slam dunks.
Okay, so we've got this great premise, a real-world connection, Kate Hudson at the helm.
Yeah.
But are there any red flags based on these reviews?
There are a couple of things to consider.
Okay.
Both reviews mentioned that while the main plot, which involves Isla, is really gripping some of the side characters, particularly Ness and Sandy feel a little underdeveloped.
Underdeveloped?
Yeah.
Is that a deal breaker?
I mean, it depends.
Okay.
Sometimes, if the core story is strong enough, I can overlook a few underdeveloped side characters.
Yeah.
But if those characters are crucial to the plot, then yeah, it could become a problem.
Yeah. It depends on their role.
Right.
Like, if they're just there for comedic relief or to move the plot along in some minor way, it's not a big deal. But if they're like major players, then yeah, they need more depth.
Exactly. And from what I'm gathering from these reviews, Running Point seems to really lean heavily on Isla's story, which might be at the expense of fully fleshing out some of those other characters.
And both reviews did say that the plot can feel a little predictable at times. Like, they even compared the show's humor to Ted Lasso and the family dynamics to Succession.
Yeah.
It's tough to be completely original these days.
Right.
But do you think those comparisons are a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
On one hand, I think comparisons like that can be helpful for viewers. It gives them a frame of reference, a sense of the show's tone and style.
Right.
But if it's too derivative, it might lack that, fresh, surprising element that really makes a show captivating.
So for you, does the potential predictability outweigh the intrigue of the premise in Kate Hudson? Or are you still willing to give it a shot?
I mean, I'm still intrigued, but it is important for viewers to go in understanding that Running Point might not be the most groundbreaking show out there.
Yeah.
It might be more about comfort and familiarity than mind-blowing originality.
Right.
And that's where I think it's really helpful to ask yourself, what are you really looking for in a show right now?
Totally, because some people, originality is everything.
Exactly.
They want to be surprised, challenged. They want something new.
But for others, it might be about strong characters, witty dialogue, or a really compelling storyline, even if it treads familiar ground.
And sometimes, let's be real, we just want to relax and enjoy something.
Totally.
And not overthink it.
Absolutely. And that's where the real question comes in.
What's that?
What do these reviews tell us about the entertainment value of Running Point?
Right.
Do they think it's actually good, even if it's not reinventing the wheel?
Okay, so let's get into that.
Okay.
What are the reviewers saying about the show's ability to just plain entertain?
Right.
Is it a fun watch?
Well, they both seem to agree that the show has heart and humor and that it keeps you engaged.
Okay.
So even if the plot isn't the most original, it seems like they were still entertained by it.
That's good to know because let's be real, sometimes, a well-executed familiar story can be just as enjoyable as something totally out there.
Right.
It's like comfort food.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You know what you're getting, and sometimes that's exactly what you want.
Comfort food for the brain.
Exactly, and sometimes comfort is what we need.
Yeah, especially with all the content out there, just vying for our attention all the time.
Right, but one thing I noticed is that neither review really dug into how the show portrays the game of basketball itself.
Oh, interesting.
Like, this is an NBA show?
Right.
Seems kind of important.
You're totally right, and I think that's something any potential viewer should think about.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like a diehard basketball fan. Does the show actually capture like the thrill of the game, the strategy, the athleticism, or does it just feel like a backdrop for all the drama happening off the court?
That's a great point. It's almost like we're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
We know about the family drama, we know about the characters, we know about the potential predictability.
But we don't know how the show handles the sport. That's at the heart of it all.
Yeah.
That's something you'll have to discover for yourself.
Okay, so we've got the good, the bad, the unanswered questions. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to talk about some other really interesting elements that these reviews touched on.
Okay. One thing that both reviews touched on was how Running Point tackles this issue of women in leadership roles, specifically in the male-dominated world of pro basketball.
That definitely caught my attention. It's one thing to just set up a female lead in a world like that,
Right.
but to actually explore the complexities in a meaningful way.
Right.
Do the reviews give us any sense of how they handle that?
They both mention that Isla faces sexism and bias, but they don't really give any specifics.
Ugh, that's so frustrating.
I know.
Right? Is it just a surface-level acknowledgement, or does it really dig into those systemic challenges?
Right.
The microaggressions, the constant need to prove herself.
Yeah. Does it show those subtle moments of disrespect?
Right.
Or is it more like the overt, displays of sexism?
Totally.
It's tough to get that right.
It is, and I think that's something that, as someone who's been following women in leadership roles, would be particularly sensitive to.
You're absolutely right. It's one thing to just have a female character in a position of power, but it's another to really portray the reality of what that means.
Exactly.
In a world that isn't always ready to accept it.
Okay, so we've got this question mark around how deeply they explore, the gender dynamics.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the elephant in the room.
Right, the brothers scandal.
The brothers scandal. What did the reviewers say about that?
They were pretty vague on specifics, which I'm guessing is to avoid spoilers.
Okay.
But they made it clear that this scandal is like a major driving force in the story.
Okay. But that makes me even more curious.
I know.
We're talking about the kind of scandal that forces him to step down from the team and lets Isla take over.
Right.
So was it financial mismanagement? A gambling problem?
I mean, those are all possibilities.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was something more personal.
Yeah.
Something that really, tarnishes his reputation.
Oh, totally.
The possibilities are kind of endless.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right? It's
Yeah.
the mystery of it all.
Exactly.
Like, what actually went down?
Right.
How does it impact Isla's journey?
And how does the whole family dynamic play into it,
Right.
Are they supportive of Isla stepping up, or are they resentful?
The reviews hinted at it being a little bit of both.
Okay, interesting.
Like, there's definitely tension and rivalry,
Yeah.
but also these glimpses of love and loyalty. It's like a high-stakes game of chess, but with family members
That's a perfect analogy.
as the pieces.
It is, because that's what makes it so much more interesting than like a straightforward good guy, bad guy scenario.
Totally.
It's real life.
Yeah.
Families are messy ambitions.
Clash. So to recap, we've got a strong cast.
Yeah.
Kate Hudson really killing it.
Yeah.
A unique premise that blends sports and family drama and humor.
Yeah.
It seems like it's entertaining, even if the plot might be a little predictable.
But let's not forget about those lingering questions.
Oh, yeah, those unanswered questions.
Right. We've got the whole portrayal of the game itself, the depth of the gender dynamics exploration, and that big mystery surrounding the brothers' scandal.
You know what? Those unanswered questions are actually making me lean more towards watching it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Sometimes the most intriguing shows are the ones that leave us with questions. Make us think. and analyze. It's not just passive entertainment. It's like actively engaging with the material.
Exactly. So before we jump into our final thoughts and, the big should you watch it question,
Right.
is there anything else from these reviews that you think is worth highlighting?
There's one thing that caught my eye. Neither review actually mentions any of the other cast members.
Oh, interesting.
Besides Kate Hudson, they talked about the characters being underdeveloped.
Yeah.
But we didn't really hear anything about their performances.
That's weird. You'd think they would have at least mentioned Brenda Song and Drew Tarver.
Yeah.
Who play Ollie and Sandy. They're both really talented actors.
Right. So either their performances are just okay.
Yeah.
Or they're deliberately downplaying them to keep the focus on Kate Hudson.
Which is a strategy.
It is a strategy.
It makes me wonder if maybe those characters are intentionally underdeveloped in the early episodes, but then they become more prominent as the season goes on.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
That could be really clever.
Yeah.
You start with that hyper-focus on Isla and her challenges, and then you gradually bring in the other characters as their stories become more intertwined with hers.
Exactly, because it would make sense considering the premise. She's taking over the team, so it's her story initially.
Yeah.
But as she settles in, those other characters would naturally start to play a bigger role.
And it could create some nice dramatic tension, too.
Oh, totally.
Are these characters allies or rivals? Are they helping her succeed, or are they trying to undermine her?
Okay, now that's getting me even more excited to watch it.
I know, right?
So much potential for character development and intrigue.
I think that's a perfect segue into our final thoughts on Running Point.
Okay.
We've talked about the good, the bad, the unanswered questions, but ultimately the decision of whether or not to watch it comes down to you.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what this all means for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Should you hit that play button or skip it and move on to something else?
What do you think?
So we've really broken down these reviews.
Oh, it have.
And we've talked about the good, the bad, the unanswered questions about Running Point.
Right.
But now I think it's time for the real question.
The $1 million question.
Should you watch it or not?
Is it worth it?
And I think the answer really depends on you, the listener.
Yeah, what kind of viewer are you?
What are you looking for?
Are you someone who just craves originality above all else? You need to be constantly surprised?
Do you want twists and turns that you never saw coming?
Right, because if that's you...
If that's your top priority, Running Point might not be for you.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's entertaining, but it might not be winning any awards for, groundbreaking storytelling.
Right. But if you're looking for a show with strong characters, witty dialogue, a compelling storyline, even if it hits some familiar beats, Running Point could be right up your alley.
And don't forget those extra layers of intrigue.
Right.
How do they actually portray the game of basketball?
Yeah.
How deep do they go into exploring the gender dynamics?
That whole mystery around the brother scandal.
Those are all things to consider.
Those elements alone could make it worth watching.
Even if the plot is predictable.
Right. It's about finding those little nuances, the moments that make you think and feel.
And honestly, I think those unanswered questions are a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
It creates anticipation, a desire to see how it all plays out.
It's like a puzzle waiting to be solved.
Right, exactly. And, sometimes the most rewarding viewing experiences are the ones that challenge us a little bit.
Yeah.
To think critically about what we're watching and come to our own conclusions.
It's true. It's more than just passive entertainment.
So if you're the kind of viewer who enjoys a well-crafted, entertaining story, but with some, thought-provoking elements sprinkled in,
right,
Running Point might be worth checking out.
Yeah, but if you're looking for something that's going to, redefine television,
blow your mind.
Yeah, blow your mind.
Yeah.
You might want to just skip this one.
And, hey, even if Running Point isn't your thing, at least we had a great conversation about it.
We did.
Right. And this deep dive, it really highlights something that's important.
What's that?
There's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to entertainment.
You're right. What works for one person might not work for another.
That's the beauty of it.
It is.
We all have our own preferences, things we like, things that spark our interest,
Things that make us want to invest our time.
So as you're deciding about Running Point, should I watch it, should I not?
Yeah.
Just trust your gut.
What are you in the mood for?
What are you looking for?
What are your expectations going in?
What do you hope to get out of it?
Because the best judge of whether a show is good or not is ultimately you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So that wraps up our deep dive into Running Point. We've analyzed the reviews.
Pros and cons.
And hopefully you have all the information you need to decide if it's for you or not.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Yeah.
Something neither of the reviews really addressed, but I think it adds another layer to this whole thing.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
How does Running Point handle the intersection of race and sports?
Ooh.
I mean, the NBA is a predominantly black league.
Yeah.
With a long and complicated history. Do they even touch on that?
That's such a good point. It's something, we all often see just glossed over in sports narratives, but it's so fundamental to the experience.
Exactly. So as you're watching Running Point, if you choose to watch it, pay attention to how they address race, both within the team dynamics and the larger context of the NBA.
Do they shy away from it or do they embrace it?
Right. Is it even there?
Because it could add a whole other dimension.
It could, and it's something we as viewers should be mindful of.
Absolutely. Representation matters, and those nuances can really change how we understand these stories.
So to wrap things up, whether you decide to watch Running Point or not,
I
hope this deep dive has sparked some interesting thoughts.
For sure.
And maybe encouraged you to engage with your entertainment choices on a deeper level.
Until next time, happy watching.